Marcus Brutus, a legendary gladiator who has won 47 fights in the Colosseum, discovers a young woman named Lydia being sold at a slave market. She's not just any slave, she's the daughter of his former commander who saved Marcus's life years ago. When Marcus sees her being mistreated, he makes an impulsive decision that will change both their lives forever. But Lydia harbors a secret that could destroy them both. And Marcus has a past that's about to catch up with him in the most brutal way possible. Blood, sand, the roar of 50,000 Romans screaming for death. Marcus Brutus stood in the center of the Colosseum, his bronze skin gleaming with sweat and crimson streaks. The tiger lay motionless at his feet, its massive body twisted in an unnatural angle. Around him, the crowd erupted like thunder. Marcus, Marcus, Marcus. But Marcus didn't raise his arms in victory. Something was wrong. His dark eyes scanned the royal box, where Emperor Commodus sat, and what he saw made his blood freeze. The emperor wasn't smiling. "Citizens of Rome," Commodus's voice boomed across the arena. "Your champion has given us another spectacular show." The crowd cheered, but Marcus caught the edge in the emperor's tone. After 6 years of fighting, he knew that voice meant trouble. "But tomorrow," Commodus continued, his cruel smile spreading wide, "Marcus Brutus will face his greatest challenge yet." Marcus's jaw clenched. What was Commodus planning? "Tomorrow our champion will fight 3 lions at once." The crowd went wild, but Marcus felt his heart sink. 3 lions. It was a death sentence. No gladiator had ever survived that. As guards escorted him from the arena, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The emperor was done playing games. This was his way of getting rid of Rome's most popular gladiator. But why now? Marcus walked through the crowded marketplace, his fame earning him respectful nods and fearful glances. The victory purse from today's fight jingled in his leather pouch, enough gold to buy his freedom 10 times over. But freedom wasn't something you could purchase when you were the emperor's favorite killer. The smell of roasted meat and exotic spices filled the air, but Marcus had lost his appetite. Tomorrow's fight kept replaying in his mind. 3 lions. The crowd would love it, but they'd also love watching him die. He was so lost in thought that he almost missed it. A commotion near the slave auction block caught his attention. A crowd had gathered around a raised platform where human beings were being sold like cattle. Marcus usually avoided these places. Too many memories of his own time on that platform 8 years ago. But something made him stop. A voice cut through the crowd, young, defiant, and strangely familiar. "I am not a common slave. I demand to speak with a Roman citizen." Marcus pushed through the crowd, his height giving him a clear view of the platform. What he saw made him freeze. A young woman, maybe 20 years old, stood chained on the auction block. Her dark hair was matted with dirt, her simple dress torn and stained, but her green eyes blazed with fury. She held herself like nobility, even in chains. But it wasn't her beauty that stopped Marcus cold. It was her face. Those eyes, that stubborn tilt of the chin, the way she stood despite her chains. "Jupiter's beard," Marcus whispered. "It can't be. What am I bid for this spirited beauty?" The auctioneer shouted. "Fresh from Gaul, completely untrained, perfect for specialized service." The crowd of buyers laughed crudely, and Marcus saw the girl's face flush with shame and rage. 50 denarii, called out a fat merchant with greedy eyes. 60, shouted another. Marcus's mind raced. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. The same green eyes, the same fierce spirit. Could it really be? 80 denarii, called a voice that made Marcus's blood boil. Gaius Maximus, a wealthy senator known for his cruelty to slaves. Marcus had heard the stories. Young slave girls who entered his household were never seen again. The girl on the platform seemed to recognize the danger too. For the first time, Marcus saw fear flicker in her eyes. 80 denarii, going once, the auctioneer called. Marcus stepped forward, his voice cut through the crowd like a blade. 500 denarii. The entire marketplace fell silent. 500 denarii was more than most Roman citizens earned in a year. The auctioneer's mouth fell open. Did you say 500? Mighty Gladiator? Marcus walked forward, his hand moving to his purse. Every eye in the crowd followed him. The girl on the platform stared at him with a mixture of confusion and hope. I did, Marcus said loudly, pulling out a heavy pouch of gold. 500 denarii. Final offer. Gaius Maximus's face turned purple with rage. You dare outbid me, slave. The insult hung in the air, like poison. Marcus was technically still a slave himself, despite his fame. But he was also the most dangerous man in Rome, and everyone knew it. Marcus turned slowly to face the senator, his dark eyes cold as winter stone. I am Marcus Brutus, champion of Rome, victor of 47 battles, slayer of the beast of Numidia. I have never lost a fight. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the silent marketplace. And yes, Senator, I outbid you. For a moment it looked like Gaius might challenge him. But even senators weren't stupid enough to fight a gladiator in the street. This isn't over, Gaius snarled, then pushed through the crowd and disappeared. Marcus turned back to the auctioneer, who was practically trembling with excitement at the massive sale. Sold to the champion of Rome. As Marcus climbed onto the platform and the auctioneer unlocked the girl's chains, she looked up at him with those familiar green eyes. Why? She whispered. Why did you save me? Marcus stared down at her, his heart pounding. Up close the resemblance was even stronger. It was impossible. But, what's your name? He asked quietly. She hesitated, then lifted her chin with that familiar defiance. Lydia. Lydia of the house of Cassius. Marcus felt the world tilt around him. Cassius. It couldn't be a coincidence. Your father, Marcus said urgently. Was your father Marcus Cassius, centurion of the 10th Legion? Lydia's eyes went wide. You knew my father. Marcus closed his eyes, overwhelmed by memories. Marcus Cassius, the man who had saved his life during the Germanic campaigns, the commander who had treated him like a brother instead of a barbarian prisoner, the Roman who had given him a chance at honor instead of a quick death. When he opened his eyes, Lydia was still staring at him. Your father saved my life, Marcus said simply. Now I save yours. But even as he said it, Marcus wondered if he was telling the truth. Yes, he owed Cassius a debt that could never be repaid. But looking into Lydia's green eyes, he suspected his motives weren't quite so noble. As he helped her down from the platform, Marcus caught sight of a familiar figure in the crowd, one of Commodus's spies, watching everything with calculating eyes. Marcus's blood chilled. The emperor would hear about this within the hour. And if Commodus thought Marcus was getting too attached to something, or someone, tomorrow's fight might be just the beginning of his problems. Come, Marcus said to Lydia, wrapping his cloak around her shoulders. We need to get you somewhere safe. But as they walked through the crowded streets, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that nowhere in Rome was truly safe anymore. Not for him, and definitely not for the girl who looked so much like the man who had been both his salvation and his greatest regret. Behind them, hidden in the crowd, 3 pairs of eyes watched them leave, the emperor's spy, Senator Gaius Maximus, and a third figure, cloaked and hooded, whose interest in Marcus Brutus and Lydia ran deeper than anyone could imagine. The game was about to change, and in Rome, when the games changed, people died. Marcus led Lydia through the winding streets of Rome, his senses on high alert. The narrow alleyways between the insulae were crowded with merchants, beggars, and thieves. But Marcus knew these streets like his own scars. He had walked them as a slave, as a prisoner, and now as a champion. Tonight, he walked them as a protector. Lydia stumbled beside him, her legs weak from days of captivity. Without a word, Marcus swept her up into his arms, carrying her like she weighed nothing. She stiffened at first, then relaxed against his chest, too exhausted to protest. Where are we going? She whispered. Somewhere the emperor's eyes can't reach, Marcus replied, turning down a darker alley. My quarters in the ludus are watched, but I know a place. They stopped at a modest house tucked between a bakery and a blacksmith shop. The wooden door was weathered, but solid, and when Marcus knocked with a specific rhythm, it opened immediately. "Marcus," a woman's voice warm with relief. "Thank the gods you're safe. We heard about tomorrow's fight." The woman who greeted them was perhaps 40 years old, with kind eyes and graying hair. She wore the simple tunic of a freed slave, but carried herself with quiet dignity. "Helena," Marcus said, stepping inside, "I need your help." Helena's eyes moved to Lydia, and her expression immediately softened. "Poor child, bring her to the back room. I'll prepare food and clean water." As Helena bustled away, Marcus set Lydia down gently on a simple wooden chair. The house was small but clean, with the smell of bread and herbs filling the air. "Who is she?" Lydia asked, watching Helena through the doorway. "Helena was my master's wife, before he freed her," Marcus explained. "When Lucius Maximus died, she could have returned to her family's wealth. Instead, she stayed in Rome to help people like us, escaped slaves, gladiators, with nowhere else to go. People like us." Lydia's voice was sharp. "I am not a slave. I am the daughter of a Roman centurion." Marcus knelt down so they were eye to eye. "In Rome, you are whatever your chains say you are. Your father may have been nobility, but you were just sold at auction. That makes you a slave, whether you accept it or not." Tears welled up in Lydia's green eyes, but she blinked them away angrily. "My father fought for Rome. He died for Rome, and this is how Rome repays his service." "Your father is dead?" Marcus felt his heart sink. He had hoped, somehow, that Marcus Cassius might still be alive. 3 years ago, Germanic tribes attacked our villa outside Gaul. They killed everyone. My mother, my little brother, the servants. I only survived because I was visiting my aunt in the countryside. Lydia's voice was steady, but Marcus could see the pain behind her eyes. "When I returned, everything was gone. The Roman governor claimed my father had debts. They took everything, including me." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Marcus Cassius had been one of the most honorable men he'd ever known. The idea that he would leave debts behind seemed impossible. "Your father saved my life 8 years ago," Marcus said finally. "During the campaign against the Germanic tribes." Lydia looked up sharply. "You were in the 10th Legion." "I was a prisoner," Marcus corrected. "Your father captured me during a raid on our village. I was 16, full of rage, ready to die before I'd serve Rome. But your father, he saw something in me. Instead of executing me like the others, he offered me a choice. Serve in the auxiliary forces for 5 years, prove my loyalty, and earn my freedom, or die." "That sounds like him," Lydia said softly. "He always believed people could choose to be better than their circumstances." "He was wrong about that," Marcus said bitterly. "I chose to serve, yes. But when my 5 years were up, when I should have been freed, the new governor decided I was too valuable to lose. They sold me to the Gladiator school instead. Your father tried to stop it, but he was just one voice against the machine of Roman bureaucracy." Helena returned with a tray of food and a pitcher of clean water. "Eat," she said gently to Lydia. "You'll need your strengths." As Lydia ate hungrily, Marcus found himself studying her face. The resemblance to her father was strong, but there was something else there. An intelligence in her eyes, a quick wit that reminded him of someone else entirely. "You said you were visiting your aunt," Marcus said suddenly. "In Gaul." Lydia nodded, pausing mid-bite. "My mother's sister. She lived in a small village near the Rhine." "What was her name?" "Julia. Julia Mercator." Lydia frowned. "Why do you ask?" Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Julia Mercator. He knew that name. Every gladiator in Rome knew that name, whispered in dark corners and spoken with fear. Julia Mercator was the woman who had supposedly organized the slave rebellion that nearly brought down Rome 3 years ago. The woman who had vanished after the rebellion failed, leaving dozens of gladiators to die on crosses along the Appian Way. If Lydia was connected to Julia Mercator, She wasn't just in danger from angry senators and jealous emperors, she was connected to the most wanted criminal in the empire. Marcus? Helena's voice cut through his thoughts. You look like you've seen a ghost. Before Marcus could answer, a sound from outside made them all freeze. Footsteps, many of them, and the distinctive clank of armor. Marcus was on his feet instantly, his hand moving to the gladius at his side. Helena, take Lydia to the cellar. Now. What's wrong? Lydia whispered. The footsteps stopped outside the house. Then came the sound Marcus had been dreading, a fist pounding on the door with the authority of imperial power. Open, by order of Emperor Commodus. Helena went pale. The cellar has a tunnel that leads to the old aqueduct, she whispered urgently to Marcus. Take her and go, I'll handle this. I won't leave you to face this alone, Marcus said. You must, Helena replied firmly. If they find her here, we're all dead. The pounding came again, harder this time. Open this door or we'll break it down. Marcus grabbed Lydia's hand. Come, we have to go. Wait, Lydia pulled back. I won't run. I haven't done anything wrong. In Rome, innocence is a luxury none of us can afford, Marcus said grimly. Now move. He pulled her toward the back of the house as Helena walked to the front door. They could hear her calling out, I'm coming. Hold your horse. The cellar was small and damp, with barely enough room for 2 people. At the far end, behind a pile of grain sacks, was a narrow tunnel that disappeared into darkness. I can't see anything, Lydia whispered. Follow me and stay quiet, Marcus replied, lighting a small torch from the embers of Helena's cooking fire. They crawled through the tunnel on hands and knees, the rough stone scraping their skin. Behind them, they could hear shouting from the house above. Marcus's jaw clenched as he recognized the voice of Captain Quintus, one of Commodus's most brutal enforcers. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, they emerged into the old aqueduct system beneath Rome. The tunnel here was tall enough to stand in, and the sound of running water echoed off the stone walls. Where does this lead? Lydia asked. Away from here, Marcus replied. But we can't stay in the city. By morning, every guard in Rome will be looking for us. As? Lydia stopped walking. Why would they be looking for you? You're the people's champion. Marcus turned to face her, and in the flickering torchlight, his expression was grim. Because I just bought you. Because I defied a senator. Because the emperor has decided I'm more dangerous alive than dead. Take your pick. They walked in silence through the underground passages, the only sound their footsteps echoing off wet stone. Marcus knew these tunnels well. During his early years as a gladiator, he had explored every inch of Rome's underground, looking for escape routes he never had the courage to use. Finally, they reached a ladder that led up to a grate near the city walls. Marcus climbed up first, checking to make sure the area was clear, then helped Lydia up. They emerged near the old cemetery outside Rome's walls, where the poor were buried in unmarked graves. The moon was full, casting everything in silver light. Now what? Lydia asked. Marcus looked back toward the city, where torches were beginning to appear on the walls. Soon the entire Imperial Guard would be searching for them. Now we disappear, Marcus. There are people outside Rome who owe me favors. We can hide until this blows over. And then what? I can't hide forever. Marcus studied her face in the moonlight. There's something you need to tell me, isn't there? About your Aunt Julia. Lydia went very still. What about her? Julia Mercator isn't just your aunt, is she? Marcus pressed. She's the woman who organized the slave rebellion 3 years ago. For a long moment, Lydia said nothing. Then quietly, how did you know? Because I was supposed to be part of that rebellion. Marcus. Julia sent word to the gladiator schools, promising freedom for anyone who would fight. But I didn't trust it. Something felt wrong. You were right not to trust it, Lydia said bitterly. It was a trap. My aunt, she wasn't organizing a rebellion. She was working for Rome, identifying slaves who might cause trouble. The rebellion was meant to fail from the beginning. Marcus felt sick. All those men who died were sacrificed to protect Rome's interests. Lydia finished. My aunt is not a hero, Marcus. She's a monster who wears the face of family. A new sound reached their ears. Dogs barking in the distance, tracking hounds. They're using dogs, Marcus said grimly. We need to move faster. As they began walking toward the hills outside Rome, Marcus's mind raced. If Lydia was connected to Julia Mercator, even as an unwilling victim, her life was worth nothing to the Roman authorities. They would torture her for information, then execute her as a traitor. But there was something else bothering him. Something about the timing of everything. Lydia's appearance at the slave market, his impossible fight tomorrow, the immediate response from the imperial guards. Lydia, he said suddenly, how long were you in captivity before today? 3 days, maybe 4. They kept us in a cellar with no light. And before that, how did you get to Rome? Lydia hesitated. I was brought here. By whom? She stopped walking and turned to face him. In the moonlight her face was pale, but determined. By my aunt, she said quietly. Julia sent for me 6 months ago, said she had worked for me, a way to honor my father's memory. But when I arrived in Rome, she wasn't there. Instead, men grabbed me off the street and threw me into slavery. Marcus felt the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place, and he didn't like the picture they formed. Your aunt set you up, he said. But why? I don't know, Lydia replied. But I think she wanted someone to buy me. Someone specific. Me, Marcus said grimly. Before Lydia could answer, the sound of horses reached their ears, moving fast, coming their way. Marcus grabbed Lydia's hand. Run. They sprinted toward a line of trees on a nearby hill, but Marcus knew they wouldn't make it. The horses were too fast, and the riders knew these hills better than he did. Sure enough, within minutes they were surrounded. A dozen mounted soldiers, led by Captain Quintus himself. The captain was a lean, cruel-faced man with scars across his cheek from some long-ago battle. Marcus Brutus, Quintus called out, his voice echoing in the night air. The emperor's pet Gladiator, running away like a coward. Marcus stepped protectively in front of Lydia, his hand on his sword. What does Commodus want, Quintus? What he's always wanted, your death. Quintus smiled coldly. But first, he wants to know why you're so interested in this particular slave girl. She's no one, Marcus replied. Just a girl I felt sorry for. Quintus laughed. The great Marcus Brutus, feeling sorry for slaves. I don't think so. His eyes moved to Lydia. You're Julia Mercator's niece, aren't you, girl? Lydia lifted her chin defiantly. I am Lydia, daughter of Marcus Cassius, and I am no one's property. Brave words, Quintus said. But you're wrong about that last part. You belong to Rome now, and Rome has questions for you. Marcus drew his sword. She's under my protection. Your protection? Quintus laughed again. You're a dead man, Gladiator. Tomorrow at noon you'll be torn apart by lions in front of 50,000 Romans. Your protection isn't worth spit. Then you'll have to kill me tonight, Marcus replied calmly. Quintus considered this for a moment, then shrugged. That can be arranged. He raised his hand to signal his men, but before he could give the order, something unexpected happened. An arrow sprouted from the chest of the soldier to Quintus's left. The man toppled from his horse without a sound. Then another arrow, and another. Ambush, Quintus shouted, wheeling his horse around. From the darkness of the trees came a group of figures, moving with deadly precision. They were dressed like bandits, but they fought with the discipline of soldiers. Within moments, half of Quintus's men were dead, or wounded. This way, one of the attackers called to Marcus. Quickly, Marcus hesitated for a split second, then grabbed Lydia's hand and ran toward their mysterious rescuers. As they reached the trees, Marcus got a clear look at the person who had called to them. A woman, perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair and intelligent eyes. She moved like a warrior, and when she smiled, Marcus felt his blood freeze. He had seen that smile in wanted posters all over Rome. Julia Mercator. Hello, niece, she said to Lydia. I've been looking forward to meeting you properly. Lydia went white. Aunt Julia, and you must be Marcus Brutus, Julia continued, studying him with calculating eyes. The famous gladiator, perfect timing. Behind them, Captain Quintus was shouting orders to his remaining men, but Julia's fighters had already melted back into the forest, taking Marcus and Lydia with them. As they moved deeper into the woods, Marcus realized that everything that had happened, Lydia's appearance at the slave market, his impulsive decision to buy her, even tomorrow's death sentence, had been carefully orchestrated. But by whom, and for what purpose? Looking at Julia Mercator's cold smile, Marcus suspected he was about to find out, and he was equally sure he wasn't going to like the answer. Julia Mercator's camp was hidden in a cave system deep in the hills outside Rome, far from the main roads where imperial patrols might venture. As Marcus and Lydia were led through the winding passages, Marcus counted at least 20 fighters, all moving with the quiet efficiency of veterans. These weren't desperate slaves or common bandits. These were professionals. Impressive, isn't it? Julia said, noticing his assessment. Rome thinks I'm hiding in some filthy sewer with a handful of desperate rebels. They have no idea what I've actually built out here. The main chamber opened into a natural amphitheater carved from living rock. Torches lined the walls, casting dancing shadows across makeshift weapons racks, supply crates, and sleeping areas. It looked like a military camp, complete with sentries and organized supply lines. Sit, Julia commanded, gesturing toward 2 wooden stools near a large table covered with maps and documents. Marcus remained standing, his hands still resting on his sword hilt. What do you want, Julia? Straight to the point. I like that in a man. Julia poured wine into 3 cups, offering one to Lydia and one to Marcus. Neither moved to take them. Fine. More for me. She drank deeply, then wiped her wars with the back of her hand. You want to know what I want? I want Rome to burn. I want every senator crucified, every emperor fed wild beasts, and every citizen to know what it feels like to be powerless. And you think kidnapping your own niece will accomplish that? Marcus asked coldly. Julia's laugh was sharp and bitter. Kidnapping? Oh, Marcus, you still don't understand, do you? She turned to Lydia. Tell him, dear niece, tell him why you're really here. Lydia was silent, her face pale in the torchlight. No? Julia shrugged. Then I'll tell him myself. Lydia isn't my victim, Gladiator. She's my partner. She came to Rome because I asked her to. She allowed herself to be captured and sold because we knew you would be at that market. And you bought her because we made sure you would recognize her face. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. That's impossible, is it? Think about it, Marcus. What are the odds that the daughter of Marcus Cassius would just happen to appear at a slave auction on the very day you decided to visit the market? What are the odds that she would look exactly like her father, the one man in Rome you felt you owed a debt to? Marcus looked at Lydia, searching her face for some sign that Julia was lying, but Lydia wouldn't meet his eyes. Tell me it's not true, Marcus said quietly. Lydia finally looked up at him, and Marcus saw tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't want to, but she said it was the only way. The only way to what? To save you, Lydia said. Marcus, you're going to die tomorrow. 3 lions, remember. No one survives that. But Julia has a plan to get you out of Rome alive. Marcus turned back to Julia, his jaw clenched with fury. And what do you get out of it? Why do you care if I live or die? Julia's smile was predatory. Because, my dear Gladiator, you're going to help me destroy the man who destroyed my life. You're going to help me kill Emperor Commodus. The cave fell silent except for the crackling of torches and the distant sound of water dripping from the ceiling. Marcus stared at Julia, processing what she had just said. You're insane, he said finally. Commodus is the most protected man in the empire. He's surrounded by guards day and night, except when he's not. Julia replied, unrolling a map on the table. Tomorrow, during your fight, Commodus will be sitting in the imperial box with minimal protection. The crowd will be watching you die. The guards will be focused on the arena, and no one will be expecting an attack from above. She pointed to a section of the map that showed the Colosseum's upper levels. There are maintenance tunnels that run through the walls of the amphitheater, tunnels that connect to the aqueduct system you used to escape tonight. A skilled fighter could move through those tunnels, emerge behind the Imperial box, and strike before anyone knew what was happening. Marcus studied the map despite himself. The guards would cut down any assassin before he could escape. True, which is why the assassin wouldn't try to escape. He would die a hero's death, taking Rome's tyrant with him. Julia's eyes gleamed, unless of course he had help, unless someone in the arena created enough chaos to give him a chance to get away. Understanding dawned on Marcus like a cold sunrise. You want me to cause that chaos? Exactly. While you're supposed to be dying gloriously for the crowd's entertainment, you'll instead be starting a riot. The crowd loves you, Marcus. If you refuse to die quietly, if you turn on your handlers and start killing Roman guards instead of beasts, the people will go wild. In that confusion, my assassin will have his chance. Marcus shook his head. And afterward, even if your plan works, even if Commodus dies, what then? I'll be executed as a traitor. Not if you're not there to be executed, Julia said smoothly. The same tunnels that will bring my assassin in can take you out. While Rome tears itself apart, trying to figure out what happened, you'll disappear forever. With you, Marcus said, understanding more of the plan. With us, Julia corrected, glancing at Lydia. My niece has grown quite fond of you, I think. Haven't you, dear? Lydia's face burned red, but she didn't deny it. Marcus looked from Julia to Lydia, and back again. And if I refuse? Julia's expression hardened. Then tomorrow you die fighting 3 lions. Commodus continues his reign of terror, and Rome continues to grind innocent people into dust, including your precious Lydia here. What do you mean? Julia's smile returned, colder than before. Did you think I rescued her from Captain Quintus out of family affection? Lydia is a wanted criminal, Marcus. She's been working with me for months, helping to organize escapes for abused slaves, passing information about Roman military movements, even helping plan attacks on supply convoys. If the imperial authorities catch her, she'll be crucified as a traitor. Marcus felt sick. Is that true? Lydia nodded miserably. After my father died, after I lost everything, Julia found me. She showed me how Rome really works, how the powerful prey on the weak with impunity. She gave me a way to fight back, by becoming a criminal yourself, by becoming free. Lydia flared. Do you know what it's like to watch everything you love destroyed by people who see you as property? To know that your father died serving an empire that wouldn't lift a finger to protect his family? Marcus did know, better than she realized. So you see, Gladiator, Julia continued, you really have no choice. Help me kill Commodus, and you both live. Refuse, and you both die. It's quite simple, really. Marcus walked to the cave entrance and stared out at the stars. Below, in the valley, he could see the lights of Rome twinkling like earthbound constellations. Somewhere down there, 50,000 people were going to bed, expecting to see him die tomorrow for their entertainment. How do I know you won't betray me like you betrayed those slaves 3 years ago? Marcus asked without turning around. Julia's voice was ice cold when she answered. Because 3 years ago I was working for Rome. I was a fool who thought I could change the system from within. The slave rebellion was supposed to be controlled, manageable, a way to identify troublemakers without actually threatening imperial power. But something went wrong. The slaves we identified were executed, but instead of creating stability, it created more resentment, more anger. Rome got its blood, but it also got an enemy who learned exactly how brutal it could be. She paused, and when she continued, her voice was raw with emotion. My husband was one of the slaves who died on those crosses, Marcus. A good man who only wanted freedom for his children. Rome crucified him to make an example, and they made me watch. Marcus turned around. Julia's composed mask had slipped, revealing the pain and rage underneath. That's when I realized the truth, she continued. Rome can't be reformed. It can't be reasoned with or negotiated with. It can only be destroyed. And sometimes, to destroy a monster, you have to become one yourself. The cave was quiet for a long moment. Then Lydia spoke up, her voice small and uncertain. "There's something else you should know, Marcus, about tomorrow's fight." Marcus looked at her. "What? The lions? They're not just any lions, they're the same beasts that killed my father's legion during the Germanic campaign. Commodus had them captured and brought to Rome specifically for this fight. He wants your death to be symbolic." Marcus felt cold understanding wash over him. "He knows about your father saving my life." "Commodus knows everything," Julia said. "He's been planning your death for months, ever since you became too popular with the crowds. A gladiator who inspires that kind of loyalty becomes dangerous to imperial power. But if he knows about my connection to Cassius, then he knows about Lydia too." "Exactly. Which means she's as good as dead unless Commodus dies first." Marcus looked at Lydia, seeing her fear despite her attempts to hide it. She had lied to him, manipulated him, used his debt to her father against him. But she had also risked her life to warn him about the true nature of tomorrow's fight. "If I agree to this," Marcus said slowly, "how do I know your assassin will succeed? How do I know I won't cause a riot for nothing?" Julia smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Because, my dear Gladiator, I'm not sending an assassin." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm going to kill Commodus myself." The revelation hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Marcus stared at Julia, seeing her in a new light, not just as a criminal or a rebel leader, but as a woman driven by grief and rage to attempt the impossible. "You're not a fighter," Marcus said. "You'll never get close enough." "Won't I?" Julia reached into a leather satchel and pulled out an elaborately decorated mask. It was the kind worn by wealthy Roman women at public events, designed to protect their complexion from the sun while still allowing them to see and be seen. "Tomorrow, I'll be sitting in the patrician section, just 3 rows behind the imperial box, a wealthy widow enjoying the games. When you create your distraction, I'll have perhaps 30 seconds to move from my seat to Commodus's throne. 30 seconds to end the life of the man who destroyed mine. And the guards will be looking at you, not at me. Besides, who suspects a grieving widow of being an assassin?" Marcus studied the mask, noting the fine craftsmanship and expensive materials. "Where did you get this?" "From a real Roman widow. Don't worry, she's not dead, just temporarily indisposed. She'll wake up tomorrow evening with a headache and no memory of how she lost her ticket to the games." Despite everything, Marcus found himself impressed by the thoroughness of Julia's planning. She had thought of every detail, anticipated every problem. "There's one thing you haven't considered," Marcus said. "What's that?" "What happens to Rome after Commodus dies? The empire doesn't just disappear because one emperor is killed. There will be another to take his place, probably someone even worse." Julia's expression grew thoughtful. "You're right, of course. Killing Commodus won't end Roman tyranny, but it will send a message that tyrants can die. It will show people that the powerful aren't untouchable. And sometimes, Marcus, that's how revolutions begin, not with grand speeches or massive armies, but with one act of defiance that inspires others to follow." A commotion near the cave entrance interrupted their conversation. One of Julia's sentries entered, breathing hard from running. "Captain Quintus is back," he reported. "With 50 men this time. They're surrounding the hill." Julia cursed under her breath. How long before they find the cave entrance? Maybe an hour, maybe less. Marcus grabbed his sword. "We need to get out of here." "Agreed," Julia said, already moving toward the weapons racks. "But where?" "Quintus will have men watching every road out of the hills." "There's another way," Marcus said. "Through the old mine shafts on the north face. They connect to a valley that leads back toward Rome." "Back toward Rome? Are you mad?" "Sometimes the most dangerous place is also the safest," Marcus replied. "Quintus will expect us to run away from the city, not toward it, and I know places in Rome where we can hide until tomorrow." Julia considered this for a moment, then nodded. Very well, but we'll need to move fast. As Julia's people began packing their essential supplies, Marcus found himself alone with Lydia for the first time since learning the truth about her deception. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "about lying to you, about everything. Are you, or is this just another part of the plan?" Lydia's eyes flashed with anger. "Not everything is about Julia's plans, Marcus. Some things are real. My feelings for you are real." "Your feelings?" Marcus studied her face. "We met this morning, and in that time, you've shown me more kindness than I've seen in 3 years," Lydia replied. "You bought me when you could have walked away. You protected me when you could have handed me over to the guards. You risked your life for someone you barely knew just because you owed a debt to my father." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Your father was a good man. So are you. That's why I couldn't let you die tomorrow without at least trying to save you." Before Marcus could respond, Julia appeared beside them. "Touching as this is, we need to move. Now." They gathered their weapons and supplies and began moving deeper into the cave system. The old mine shafts were treacherous, with loose rocks and sudden drop-offs, but Marcus knew the way. He had explored these passages during his early days as a gladiator, dreaming of escape routes he never had the courage to use. Behind them they could hear the sounds of Quintus's soldiers getting closer. Shouts echoed through the tunnels, along with the clank of armor and weapons. "They're in the caves," one of Julia's men reported. "Moving fast, then we move faster," Julia replied grimly. They pressed on through the darkness, guided only by torchlight and Marcus's memory. The tunnel began to slope upward, and Marcus knew they were getting close to the exit. But when they reached the cave mouth that should have led to the hidden valley, they found it blocked, not by a rockfall or natural obstruction, but by Roman soldiers. Quintus himself stood at the entrance, sword drawn, flanked by a dozen of his best men. "Going somewhere?" Quintus asked with a cold smile. They were trapped. Behind them, more soldiers were advancing through the tunnels. Ahead, Quintus blocked their escape route. Julia's fighters numbered perhaps 15, but they were exhausted from the chase and caught in a narrow passage where their numbers meant nothing. "It's over, Julia," Quintus called out. "Surrender now, and I promise you a quick death." Julia raised her sword. "I've heard Roman promises before." Marcus stepped forward. "Let them go, Quintus. Your quarrel is with me." "My quarrel is with all enemies of Rome," Quintus replied. "But you're right about one thing, Gladiator. You are the prize Commodus wants most." He gestured to his men, who raised their shields and prepared to advance. Marcus looked back at Lydia, seeing the fear in her eyes despite her brave front. He thought about her father, about the debt he could never repay, about the life she might have had if Rome hadn't destroyed everything she loved. He thought about Julia's plan, about the slim chance it offered for freedom and revenge. And he made his choice. "I'll make you a deal, Quintus," Marcus called out. "Single combat, you and me. If I win, they go free. If you win, I surrender without a fight." Quintus laughed. "Why would I agree to that? I have you outnumbered 10-1. "Because," Marcus said, drawing his gladius, "you've always wondered if you could beat me in a fair fight. This is your chance to find out." Quintus's expression changed. Marcus had hit home. Every soldier in Rome knew that Marcus Brutus had never lost a single combat. The chance to be the man who finally defeated him was too tempting to resist. "Very well," Quintus said, stepping forward into the cave mouth. "Single combat, but when I kill you, the others still die." "When you kill me," Marcus replied, settling into a fighting stance, "they can die knowing Rome's greatest champion fell to a better warrior." But as Quintus advanced with his sword raised, Marcus wasn't thinking about dying. He was thinking about living, about tomorrow's fight in the Colosseum, about Julia's desperate plan to kill an emperor, and about the green-eyed woman watching from behind him, who had risked everything to give him a chance at freedom. The clash of steel rang through the cave like a bell tolling the hour of judgment. Current word count, approximately 7,400 words. The chapter reveals the full extent of the conspiracy while deepening the emotional stakes. Marcus learns he's been manipulated, but also discovers Lydia's genuine feelings, while Julia's tragic backstory explains her motivation. The chapter ends with a crucial sword fight that will determine everyone's fate, keeping viewers on the edge of their seats. The cave erupted in the sound of clashing steel as Marcus and Quintus circled each other like predators. Quintus was skilled, Marcus had to admit. His blade work was precise, his footwork solid. He had clearly trained with the best sword masters Rome had to offer. But Marcus had learned to fight from necessity, not instruction. Every scar on his body represented a lesson learned the hard way. Every victory had been earned with blood and pain. Quintus lunged forward with a thrust, aimed at Marcus's heart. Marcus sidestepped and brought his gladius up in a counterattack that would have opened most men from ribs to throat. But Quintus was fast, spinning away and bringing his own blade around in a whistling arc toward Marcus's neck. The sound of steel meeting steel rang through the cave as Marcus parried just in time. The impact jarred his arm, reminding him that Quintus was stronger than he looked. Is this the best Rome's champion can do? Quintus taunted, pressing his attack with a series of quick strikes. Marcus gave ground, letting Quintus think he was gaining the advantage. Behind him he could hear Lydia whispering what sounded like prayers. To his left, Julia's fighters watched with grim faces, knowing their lives depended on the outcome of this duel. Quintus's blade sliced across Marcus's forearm, drawing blood. The captain smiled cruelly. First blood to me, Gladiator. How does it feel to finally face a real warrior instead of half-starved criminals and wild beasts? Marcus looked down at the cut on his arm, then back at Quintus. You want to know the difference between the arena and real fighting, Captain? What's that? In the arena, I have to put on a show. Marcus's next attack was so fast that Quintus barely had time to react. The gladiator's blade became a silver blur, striking high, low, left-right in a pattern that seemed random, but was anything but. This was the technique that had made him famous throughout the empire, a fighting style born from desperation and perfected through countless battles. Quintus managed to block the first 3 strikes, but the 4th slipped through his guard and opened a line across his chest. The 5th cut deep into his sword arm. By the 6th, he was stumbling backward, his confident smile replaced by wide-eyed panic. Impossible, Quintus gasped, blood running down his arm. No one is that fast. Tell that to the 47 men who tried to kill me, Marcus replied coldly. He pressed his advantage, driving Quintus back toward the cave mouth. The captain's soldiers watched in stunned silence as their supposedly invincible leader was systematically dismantled by a man they had dismissed as an overgrown slave. Quintus made one last desperate attempt to turn the tide, feinting low then striking high in a move that had killed many opponents. But Marcus had seen every trick, faced every technique. He caught Quintus's blade on his own, twisted his wrist, and sent the captain's sword spinning away into the darkness. Quintus fell to his knees, gasping for breath, blood pooling beneath him from a dozen wounds. "Kill me then," he said, lifting his chin with the last remnants of his pride. "Make it clean." Marcus raised his gladius, then paused. "Your men, will they honor our agreement?" Quintus looked at his soldiers, then back at Marcus. For a moment, something like respect flickered in his eyes. "You fought with honor. They'll let your people go." Marcus nodded and brought his blade down in one swift motion. Quintus died as he had lived, as a Roman soldier. The cave fell silent, except for the sound of dripping water and labored breathing. Marcus turned to face Quintus's men, his sword still bloody in his hand. "Your captain died with honor," Marcus said loudly. "Honor the agreement he made." The soldiers looked uncertain, leaderless. Finally, the eldest among them, a grizzled veteran with scars on his face, stepped forward. "The deal was single combat," he said carefully. "You won. We'll let you pass, and you won't follow us." The veteran looked at Quintus's body, then at his own men. Marcus could see the calculation in his eyes. Without their captain, these soldiers had no particular loyalty to this mission, and Marcus Brutus was still the most popular gladiator in Rome. Killing him would make them very unpopular with the crowds. "We came here for Captain Quintus," the veteran said finally. "Our orders were to follow his lead. Since he's dead, we'll report that we found nothing but empty caves." Marcus studied the man's face, looking for deception, but he saw only pragmatism. These were career soldiers, not fanatics. With Quintus dead, they had no reason to die for a cause that was never really theirs. "Thank you," Marcus said simply. As Julia's group filed past the Roman soldiers toward the hidden valley, Marcus caught the veteran's arm. "What's your name, soldier?" "Gaius Flavius, sir. 10th Legion." Marcus felt a chill. "The 10th? You served under Marcus Cassius?" The veteran's weathered face brightened slightly. I did. Best commander I ever served under. Died too young, that one. He saved my life once. Then you're a lucky man. The centurion didn't waste his mercy on many. Gaius looked at Marcus with new interest. "You're not what I expected from a gladiator." "What did you expect?" "A killer. A beast in human form." Gaius shook his head. "But you fought Quintus with honor. Gave him a clean death when you could have made him suffer. That takes character." As they reached the valley beyond the caves, dawn was beginning to break over the hills around Rome. In the distance, Marcus could see the city walls gleaming in the early light, and beyond them the massive bulk of the Colosseum where he was supposed to die in just a few hours. "What now?" Lydia asked, walking beside him. Julia overheard and answered for him. "Now we prepare. Marcus, you need to get back to the city without being seen. The games begin at noon, and you need to be in your cell when they come for you. And you? I have a wealthy widow to visit," Julia said with a cold smile. "And a ticket to collect." They had reached a crossroads where the valley path split in 3 directions. One led back toward Rome, another toward the port at Ostia, and the third wound up into the mountains where a fugitive might disappear forever. "This is where we part ways," Julia announced. "For now." She pulled Marcus aside, speaking in a voice too low for the others to hear. "Listen carefully. When you enter the arena today, you'll be fighting the 3 lions from Germania. But that's not all. Commodus has arranged for additional entertainment." "What do you mean?" "Archers, hidden in the crowd. If by some miracle you manage to kill the lions, they have orders to fill you with arrows before you can claim victory." Marcus felt sick. "He really wants me dead. More than that, he wants you to die in a way that will discourage others from becoming too popular with the crowds. Your death is meant to be a lesson, and your plan accounts for the archers." Julia nodded grimly. "When you refuse to die quietly, when you start fighting the guards instead of the beasts, the archers will reveal themselves. That's when the crowd will realize what's really happening. That's when they'll start to riot, and that's when you'll make your move on Commodus." "But Marcus, you need to understand, once you start this, there's no going back. You'll be marked as a traitor to Rome. Even if we escape, even if we disappear into the mountains, you'll never be able to return to your old life." Marcus looked back toward Rome, thinking about the ludus, where he had lived for 6 years, about the crowds who cheered his name, about the only life he had known since losing his freedom. Then he looked at Lydia, who was watching him with those green eyes that reminded him so much of her father. "My old life was never really mine anyway," Marcus said quietly. "I've been living on borrowed time since the day your sister's husband saved me from slavery. Maybe it's time to start living for myself." Julia smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuine. "I hope you mean that, Gladiator, because what we're about to do will change everything." She turned to address her fighters. "Scatter. Use the safe houses we discussed. If this goes well, we'll meet at the old watchtower tomorrow night. If it goes badly," she shrugged, "try to make it to Gaul." As Julia's people melted away into the morning mist, Marcus found himself alone with Lydia at the crossroads. "I should go," Marcus said. "I need to get back to the city before I'm missed." Marcus, wait. Lydia caught his arm. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said last night. What is it? When Julia first told me her plan, when she asked me to help trap you, I said no. I refused to have any part in manipulating someone who had served with my father. Marcus frowned. Then why did you change your mind? Because she showed me something. Lydia reached into her tunic and pulled out a small scroll, sealed with wax. A letter from my father, written just before he died. With shaking hands, Marcus took the scroll and broke the seal. The parchment was old and stained, but the writing was clear. Marcus recognized the precise, military script of Marcus Cassius. To my friend Marcus, son of no name, who has become a man of great honor. If these words should ever reach you, know that I have not forgotten the debt between us. You saved my life in the forests of Germania when barbarian raiders would have killed me. I saved yours when Roman law would have executed you. We are even in the eyes of the god. But there is one thing more I would ask of you, as a friend rather than a creditor. If harm should ever come to my family, if my wife and children should ever need protection, I pray you will remember the bond between us. My daughter Lydia has her mother's beauty, but her father's stubborn courage. She will need both to survive in this world. Your friend in this life and the next, Marcus Cassius, centurion of the 10th Legion. Marcus read the letter twice, his hands trembling. Where did Julia get this? She found it among my father's papers after he died. She's been carrying it for 3 years, waiting for the right moment to use it. Use it how? Lydia's eyes filled with tears. She knew that if you ever learned about the letter, you would feel obligated to protect me. She was counting on your sense of honor to make you vulnerable. Marcus stared at the letter, feeling the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders like a cloak. Even in death, Marcus Cassius was still saving his life and binding him with chains stronger than iron. So everything that's happened, Marcus said slowly, my buying you at the slave market, my decision to help you, even my agreeing to Julia's plan, it's all because of this letter. No, Lydia said firmly, the letter got you to notice me. Yes, but everything else, the way you protected me, the way you fought for me, the way you're willing to risk everything for a chance at freedom, that's who you are, Marcus. That's the man my father saw in you 8 years ago. Marcus looked down at the letter one more time, then carefully rolled it up and handed it back to Lydia. Keep it, he said. But know this, I'm not helping you because of what your father asked, or because of guilt, or because Julia manipulated me. I'm helping you because I choose to. Lydia's tears spilled over. And I'm helping you because I've fallen in love with the most honorable man I've ever met. Before Marcus could respond, she stood on her toes and kissed him. It was soft and desperate and tasted of tears and hope. When they broke apart, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. If we survive today, he said quietly, we'll have time to figure out what this means. If we don't, we will, Lydia said fiercely. We have to. Marcus pulled away reluctantly. I need to go. I know. Lydia stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. Marcus, when you're in that arena today, when you're facing those lions, remember something. What? You're not fighting for Rome. You're not fighting for the crowd. You're fighting for us, for the chance to be free. Marcus nodded, memorizing her face in the morning light. Then he turned and began walking back toward Rome, toward the Colosseum, toward a fight that would either free him or kill him. Behind him, Lydia watched until he disappeared around a bend in the path. Then she too set off, taking the mountain road toward a hidden camp where Julia's remaining supporters waited. Neither of them noticed the lone figure watching from the hilltop above, a man in a dark cloak whose face was hidden in shadow. He had seen everything, heard everything, and now he too began moving toward Rome, carrying news that would change everything. By the time the sun reached its zenith, the entire empire would know the name of Marcus Brutus, but whether they would remember him as a hero or a traitor remained to be seen. The games were about to begin. Marcus slipped back into Rome through the old aqueduct tunnels, just as the city bells chimed the 6th hour. The streets were already crowded with citizens heading toward the Colosseum, their voices buzzing with excitement about the day's games. Vendors sold wine and honey cakes. Children ran through the crowds wearing crude gladiator masks, and betting men argued loudly about the odds of various fighters surviving their matches. None of them knew they were about to witness the end of an empire. Marcus made his way through the back alleys to the gladiator school, keeping his head down and his cloak pulled tight. The ludus was in chaos when he arrived. Trainers shouting orders, fighters preparing their equipment, and slaves running frantically to complete last-minute preparations. Marcus, Titus, the old trainer who had taught him to fight, grabbed his arm as he entered the main courtyard. "Where have you been? Dominus has been looking for you all morning." "I went for a walk," Marcus replied calmly, "to clear my head before the fight." Titus studied his face suspiciously. "You look different. Calmer. Men facing 3 lions don't usually look calm. Maybe I've made peace with death, or maybe you've made plans to avoid it," Titus said quietly. He lowered his voice even further. "Listen, boy, I've been training gladiators for 20 years. I've seen men face impossible odds before. The ones who survive aren't the strongest or the fastest. They're the ones who refuse to accept that the odds are impossible." Marcus looked at the old trainer with new interest. "What are you saying, Titan?" "I am saying that if you have a plan, any plan, you might want to share it with someone who knows every inch of that arena." Before Marcus could respond, a new voice cut across the courtyard. "Marcus Brutus. There you are." Lucius Dominus, the owner of the gladiator school, strode toward them with a mixture of relief and anger on his face. He was a fat, greedy man who saw his fighters as nothing more than investments, but he was also shrewd enough to know that Marcus was his most valuable asset. "Where have you been?" Dominus demanded. "The imperial messengers have been here 3 times looking for you. What did they want? To make sure you hadn't run away, of course. Though why you'd run from the greatest fight of your career is beyond me." Dominus's pig-like eyes gleamed with greed. "Do you know how much money is riding on today's match? Half of Rome has bet on whether you'll last 5 minutes against those lions. And which side are you betting on?" Marcus asked coldly. Dominus had the grace to look embarrassed. "Well, a man has to be practical. 3 lions is challenging, even for you." Marcus felt a surge of disgust. This man had profited from 6 years of his blood and pain, and now he was betting on his death. "Don't worry, Dominus. I plan to give the crowd their money's worth." Something in Marcus's tone made both Dominus and Titus look at him sharply. But before either could ask questions, the sound of horns echoed across the city. The games were beginning. "Time to go," Dominus said, suddenly nervous. "Remember, Marcus, die well, die with honor. The crowd remembers a good death longer than a boring victory." "I'll keep that in mind," Marcus replied. As they made their way toward the Colosseum, Marcus caught sight of familiar faces in the crowd. Julius' people, dressed as common citizens, positioned at key points around the amphitheater. They were armed, he could tell from the way they carried themselves, and ready to act when the signal came. The entrance to the gladiator tunnels was packed with fighters preparing for their matches. Most of them avoided looking at Marcus. In the brutal world of the arena, today's friend could be tomorrow's opponent. But a few nodded respectfully. Even if they couldn't afford to show friendship, they could still acknowledge skill. "Marcus." A quiet voice made him turn. It was Darius, a veteran gladiator from Thrace who had won his freedom 3 years ago, but chose to stay and fight for prize money. "I heard about your match today. News travels fast. Bad news travels fastest of all." Darius moved closer, speaking in a voice only Marcus could hear. "Listen, brother. I've fought in this arena for 8 years. I've seen men face impossible odds and survive, but I've also seen the Emperor arrange special surprises for gladiators who get too popular with the crowds." Marcus kept his expression neutral. "What kind of surprises?" "The kind that make sure a fighter dies no matter how well he fights." Darius glanced around to make sure they weren't being overheard. There are rumors that Commodus has stationed archers in the crowd, hidden among the spectators. If you somehow manage to kill those lions, I'll still die. That's the plan. But here's the thing, those archers aren't imperial guards. They're mercenaries, hired for this one job. Which means they care more about getting paid than about dying for Rome. Marcus understood. They'll run if things get dangerous. Exactly, and things might get very dangerous if the crowd realizes what's happening. Darius clapped him on the shoulder. Fight well, brother, and if you get a chance to take some Romans with you, remember those of us still in chains. As Darius walked away, Marcus felt a chill. The gladiators knew. They might not know the details of Julia's plan, but they understood that something was about to happen. Something that might change their world forever. The holding cell beneath the arena was damp and cold, with only a small barred window that looked up toward the emperor's box. Marcus could hear the crowd above, 50,000 voices roaring in anticipation. Soon, those voices would either be cheering his death or screaming in terror. He knelt on the stone floor and closed his eyes, trying to center himself the way Titus had taught him years ago. A gladiator who let emotion control him was a dead gladiator. But today, emotion might be his greatest weapon. Marcus Brutus. The voice was cultured, smooth and utterly cold. Marcus opened his eyes to find Emperor Commodus standing outside his cell, flanked by 2 Praetorian guards. The emperor was younger than Marcus had expected, perhaps 30 years old, with the soft features of a man who had never known real hardship, but his eyes were cruel and calculating. "Your Imperial Majesty," Marcus said, rising to his feet, but not bowing. "To what do I owe this honor?" Commodus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I wanted to see my greatest gladiator before his final performance." "Tell me, Marcus, are you afraid?" "Should I be? Most men would be. 3 lions from Germania. The same beasts that's killed your old friend Marcus Cassius and his legion. I thought you might appreciate the symmetry." Marcus kept his face carefully neutral, but inside rage burned like molten iron. "You know about Cassius. I know everything, gladiator. I know he saved your life during the Germanic campaign. I know you felt you owed him a debt. I even know about his daughter." Marcus's blood turned to ice. "What about his daughter?" Commodus's smile widened. "Beautiful girl, spirited. I can see why you'd be attracted to her. Unfortunately, she's made some very poor choices in companions, associating with known criminals, planning acts of treason against Rome. She's done nothing wrong, hasn't she? My spies tell me she's been working with the terrorist Julia Mercatar for months, helping slaves escape, passing military secrets, even participating in attacks on Roman supply convoys." Commodus shook his head in mock sadness. "Such a waste. She could have lived quietly, honored her father's memory in peace. Instead, she chose rebellion." "What do you want?" Marcus asked through gritted teeth. "What I've always wanted. Your death. But now I want it to mean something. I want your final moments to be a lesson about the price of defying Rome." Commodus gestured toward the arena above. "When you die today, and you will die, the crowd will see what happens to those who become too popular, too beloved by the people. They'll see that no one, not even the great Marcus Brutus, is stronger than imperial will. And Lydia will be crucified, as a traitor, of course. Publicly, slowly, so everyone can see what happens to those who consort with rebels." Commodus's eyes gleamed with malice, "Unless, of course, you'd like to beg for her life. I might be persuaded to show mercy to a dying gladiator's final wish." Marcus stared at the emperor, understanding finally dawning. This wasn't just about eliminating a popular gladiator. This was about breaking him. Commodus wanted him to die not as a defiant hero, but as a broken man pleading for mercy. "I'll make you a deal," Marcus said quietly. "You're hardly in a position to negotiate, aren't I? You want a spectacular death, something the crowd will remember, But what if I don't cooperate? What if I just lie down and let the lions tear me apart without putting up a fight? The crowd will be disappointed. They'll blame you for wasting Rome's greatest gladiator on a boring execution. Commodus's smile faltered slightly. He knew Marcus was right. The crowd expected a show, and an emperor who disappointed the crowd too often might find himself facing problems closer to home. What do you propose? Commodus asked carefully. I'll give you the fight of a lifetime. I'll make it spectacular, memorable, worthy of songs and stories. In exchange, you let the girl live. Send her away from Rome, but let her live. Commodus considered this for a long moment. And if you somehow manage to kill the lions, what then? Then I'll have earned my freedom, according to Roman law. Roman law, Commodus laughed. Roman law is whatever I say it is. But very well, Gladiator, give me a spectacular show, and I'll let your precious Lydia live to mourn you. As the emperor walked away, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Commodus thought he was negotiating from a position of strength, but he had just made a crucial mistake. He had confirmed that he knew about Julia's plan, which meant he would be watching for signs of rebellion from the gladiator. He wouldn't be watching for an attack from a grieving widow sitting 3 rows behind his throne. The horn sounded again, closer this time. Marcus's match was next. As the guards came to escort him to the arena, Marcus caught sight of something that made his heart race. Through the small window of his cell, he could see into the crowd, and there, sitting in the patrician section exactly where she had promised to be, was a woman in an elaborate mask and the robes of a wealthy widow. Julia was in position. The massive gates of the arena began to grind open, and sunlight flooded the tunnel. 50,000 Romans roared as Marcus Brutus stepped into the sand for what everyone believed would be the last time. But as Marcus walked toward the center of the arena, his hand resting on the hilt of his gladius, he wasn't thinking about death. He was thinking about freedom, about justice, about the look in Lydia's eyes when she had told him she loved him. The crowd's roar faded to a dull buzz as Marcus focused on what lay ahead. Across the arena, 3 gates were opening. Through each one came a lion, massive, scarred beasts from the forests of Germania. The same creatures that had killed Marcus Cassius and his men. Today, they would face the man Cassius had saved. Marcus raised his sword toward the emperor's box, where Commodus sat wearing a crown of gold and an expression of smug satisfaction. For Marcus Cassius, Marcus said to us. Marcus said to us, Marcus said shortly, his words lost in the crowd's roar. For Lydia, for everyone Rome has broken. The lions began to circle him, their yellow eyes fixed on his every movement. Above him, hidden in the crowd, archers nocked their arrows and waited for the signal. Behind the emperor, a grieving widow adjusted her mask and calculated the distance to the imperial throne. And in the mountains outside Rome, Lydia watched the sun reach its zenith and whispered a prayer to gods she wasn't sure were listening. The fate of an empire balanced on the edge of a gladius. Marcus Brutus smiled and prepared to change the world. The first lion struck with the speed of lightning, its massive claws aimed at Marcus's throat. But the gladiator had faced death 47 times before, and his body moved with instincts honed by years of survival. He rolled left, feeling the beast's claws whistle through the air, where his head had been a heartbeat earlier. The crowd erupted as Marcus came up from his roll with his gladius already moving, the blade catching the lion across its flank as it landed. Blood sprayed across the sand, and the beast roared in pain and fury. But there were 2 more lions circling him now, and they had learned from their companion's mistake. They moved with the coordinated intelligence of pack hunters, one keeping Marcus's attention while the others maneuvered for killing positions. "Kill them!" someone screamed from the crowd. "Kill them all!" Marcus could hear individual voices now, picked out from the general roar. Merchants, betting their life savings, nobles cheering for blood, common citizens who saw him as their champion against the cruel whims of the powerful. The second lion fainted left, then sprang right. Marcus spun to meet it, but the third beast used that moment to attack from behind. Claws raked across Marcus's back, tearing through leather and flesh. He stumbled forward, fighting to stay on his feet, as blood ran down his spine. The crowd gasped. Their champion was hurt, bleeding, mortal after all. In the Imperial box, Commodus leaned forward with excitement. "Yes," he whispered, "bleed for me, Gladiator. Show them all how even heroes die." But Marcus wasn't thinking about dying, as the wounded lion circled him warily, and the other two prepared for another coordinated attack. He was thinking about Titus's words. The ones who survive aren't the strongest or the fastest. They're the ones who refuse to accept that the odds are impossible. Marcus did something no gladiator had ever done in the Colosseum. He turned his back on the lions and looked directly at Emperor Commodus. "You want a show?" Marcus shouted, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet arena. "You want spectacle? Then let me tell you about Marcus Cassius." The crowd murmured in confusion. Gladiators didn't make speeches. They fought and died for the entertainment of their betters. Marcus Cassius was a Roman centurion who died serving this empire. Marcus continued dodging as one of the lions lunged at him. He was killed by these very beasts while protecting Roman citizens in Germania. Commodus was on his feet now, his face purple with rage. "Silence him," he screamed at the guards, but the guards were confused. How could they silence a man who was 40 feet away in an arena full of lions? Marcus killed the wounded lion with a single thrust to its heart, then continued his speech without missing a beat. "Cassius saved my life once, showed mercy to a barbarian prisoner because he believed in honor. And how did Rome repay his service?" The crowd was hanging on every word now. This wasn't just entertainment anymore. This was something else entirely. "Rome stole his lands," Marcus shouted, dancing away from the second lion's charge. "Rome enslaved his daughter. Rome let the family of a hero starve while senators grew fat on stolen wealth." In the patrician section, Julia felt her heart racing. This wasn't the plan. Marcus was supposed to create chaos by fighting the guards, not by giving speeches. But she could see the effect his words were having on the crowd. Faces that had been excited were now angry. Murmurs were spreading through the stands like wildfire. "Lies," Commodus screamed. "Kill him! Someone kill him now!" But no one moved. The Imperial guards looked uncertain. The crowd was growing restless, and the archers hidden throughout the stands were waiting for a signal that wasn't coming. Marcus drove his sword into the second lion's chest, twisting the blade to ensure a quick death. Only one beast remained now, but it was the largest of the three, a massive male with scars across its muzzle and hatred in its yellow eyes. "This is how Rome treats its heroes," Marcus continued, circling the final lion. "This is how the empire rewards loyalty and service, with betrayal, theft, and murder." The crowd was no longer cheering. They were listening, and many of them were nodding. Everyone in Rome knew someone who had served in the legions only to return home to find their property seized, their families scattered, their sacrifice forgotten. "And what of the people?" Marcus shouted, his voice carrying to the highest seats. "What of the citizens who pay the taxes, who serve in the armies, who die for Rome's glory? How does the empire reward them?" He gestured toward the crowd with his bloodied sword. "It feeds them bread and circuses. It gives them spectacles of death to distract them from their empty bellies and their broken dreams." The final lion attacked with desperate fury, sensing perhaps that this was its last chance to kill the strange prey that would not simply die quietly. Marcus met its charge head-on, gladius extended, letting the beast's own momentum drive the blade deep into its heart. As the lion collapsed, Marcus planted his foot on its massive head and raised his sword toward the sky. "I am Marcus Brutus, son of no name, slave of Rome, and I tell you this: a man's worth is not determined by his birth or his chains. It is determined by how he chooses to live and how he chooses to die." The crowd exploded, not with cheers this time, but with something far more dangerous: anger, righteous, burning anger at an empire that had promised them glory and given them only suffering. "Death to the tyrants," someone screamed from the upper levels. "Justice for the people," cried another voice. Commodus realized too late that he had lost control of the situation. "Archers," he screamed, "kill him now." Throughout the stands, men who had been posing as ordinary citizens suddenly stood and raised crossbows. There were at least 20 of them, positioned to ensure that no matter how Marcus tried to dodge, some of their bolts would find their mark. But as the archers took aim, something unexpected happened. The crowd turned on them. Citizens who moments before had been cheering for blood now saw armed men threatening their champion. They fell on the archers with fists, stones, whatever weapons they could find. Crossbow bolts flew wild as their wielders were pulled down into the mob. In the chaos, Julia made her move. She had been watching for the perfect moment, and Marcus had given it to her. While every guard in the Colosseum was looking toward the arena or trying to control the crowd, no one was watching the grieving widow in the third row. Julia slipped out of her seat and began climbing toward the imperial box, her movements hidden by the panic spreading through the stands. Under her widow's robes, her hand closed around the hilt of a dagger, small, sharp, and coated with poison that would kill an emperor in seconds. But Commodus had survived as emperor for 3 years by being paranoid and ruthless. Even in the midst of the chaos, some part of his mind registered movement behind him. He turned just as Julia reached the edge of the imperial box. For a moment, they stared at each other across 3 feet of space. Commodus saw a woman with hatred burning in her eyes and a dagger in her hand. Julia saw the man who had ordered her husband's death and destroyed her life. "Guards!" Commodus screamed. But Julia was already moving, the dagger arcing toward the emperor's heart. Commodus stumbled backward, his hands raised to protect himself. But he was soft from years of luxury, while Julia had been hardened by 3 years of planning for this moment. The blade slid between his ribs like it was meant to be there. Commodus looked down at the dagger in his chest, then up at Julia's face. "You," he whispered, blood frothing on his lips. "You're supposed to be dead." "So are a lot of people," Julia replied coldly. "My husband, Marcus Cassius. All the slaves you've murdered for entertainment. Today you join them." Commodus opened his mouth to speak, but only blood came out. He toppled backward off his throne and lay still. The Emperor of Rome was dead. In the arena below, Marcus had seen Julia's attack succeed, but he had also seen Praetorian guards rushing toward the imperial box, their swords drawn. Julia would never escape on her own. Marcus did the only thing he could do. He ran, not away from the danger, but toward it. Up the arena wall, using handholds meant for maintenance workers, his gladiator's strength and agility carrying him higher with each second. The crowd saw their champion climbing toward the imperial box and went completely wild. Some began following his example, scaling the walls and pouring into the patrician sections. Others fought with imperial guards who were trying to restore order. The entire Colosseum had become a battlefield. Marcus reached the imperial box just as the first Praetorian guard closed on Julia. The guard's sword was raised to strike her down when Marcus's gladius took him in the back. The man fell without a sound. "Time to go," Marcus said, grabbing Julia's arm. But more guards were coming, and the exits were blocked. They were trapped on a platform, 40 feet above the arena floor, with nowhere to run. "Marcus," Lydia's voice cut through the chaos. Marcus looked up to see her rappelling down from the Colosseum's upper levels on a rope, moving with the skill of someone who had spent months training with Julia's rebels. She landed on the platform beside them, breathing hard but grinning fiercely. "I couldn't let you have all the fun," she said. "How did you get in here?" "Julia's people have been planning this for months. We have ropes, weapons, escape routes." She pointed toward an opening in the wall behind the imperial box. "That leads to maintenance tunnels that connect to the aqueduct system." As they ran toward the tunnel, Marcus looked back at the chaos they were leaving behind. The Colosseum was in complete anarchy. Citizens fought with guards. Gladiators had broken out of their holding cells to join the battle, and smoke was beginning to rise from fires started in the confusion. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, as they plunged into the darkness of the tunnels. "Now Rome learns what revolution looks like," Julia replied grimly. "Commodus is dead, but there are other tyrants waiting to take his place. This is just the beginning." They moved through the underground passages like ghosts, following routes Julia's people had mapped out over months of preparation. Behind them they could hear the sounds of battle growing fainter as they put distance between themselves and the Colosseum. When they finally emerged into daylight, they were outside Rome's walls, in the same valley where Marcus and Lydia had parted that morning. But everything had changed. Smoke rose from multiple points within the city, and they could hear the distant sound of bells ringing in alarm. "The city's in revolt," Lydia said, watching the smoke with wide eyes. "It won't last," Julia said pragmatically. "The legions will restore order within a day or two. But we've accomplished something important today." "What's that?" Marcus asked. "We've shown people that tyrants can die, that the powerful aren't untouchable, that ordinary citizens can fight back if they choose to." Julia looked back toward Rome with satisfaction. "Ideas like that spread, Marcus. They take root in people's minds and grow into movement." As they walked toward the mountains, Marcus felt Lydia slip her hand into his. Her fingers were strong and warm, and for the first time in 8 years, Marcus felt truly free. "So what do we do now?" Lydia asked. Marcus looked at the woman who had risked everything to save him, then at the rebel leader who had given them both a chance at freedom, then at the road stretching ahead of them toward an uncertain future. "Now we live," Marcus said simply. "We find a place where we can be free, and we build something better than what we left behind. And if Rome comes after us," Marcus smiled, the expression transforming his scarred face, "then Rome will discover that some chains are easier to break than others. And once a man has tasted freedom, he'll die before he lets anyone put those chains back on." They walked into the mountains as the sun began to set, 3 fugitives from the most powerful empire in the world. Behind them, Rome burned with the fire of revolution. Ahead of them lay danger, uncertainty, and the possibility of a life worth living. But for the first time in years, Marcus Brutus was not thinking about survival. He was thinking about hope. In the months that followed, stories would spread throughout the empire. Stories of a gladiator who defied an emperor, of citizens who rose up against their oppressors, of the day freedom came to the Colosseum. Some would say Marcus Brutus had been a hero, others would call him a traitor. But in the slave quarters and the poor districts, in the army camps and the provinces, people would whisper his name and remember that even Rome's greatest champion had once been just a man in chains who chose to be free. And sometimes, that's how the world changes. Not with grand pronouncements or massive armies, but with one person's decision to say, "No more," and mean it. Marcus Brutus had said no to slavery, no to tyranny, and no to a system that crushed the innocent for the entertainment of the powerful. And in saying no, he had said yes to something far more precious. He had said yes to love, to hope, to the possibility that tomorrow could be better than today. As they disappeared into the mountains, the 3 fugitives carried with them something more valuable than all the gold in Rome's treasury. They carried the knowledge that freedom is not something that can be given or taken away. It is something that lives in the human heart, waiting for the moment when courage meets opportunity and ordinary people choose to become extraordinary. That moment had come, and Rome would never be the same. Years later, in a small village nestled in the mountains of Gaul, an old Gladiator would tell stories to his children about the day their father helped change an empire. He would speak of honor and courage, of love conquering fear, and of the price of freedom. And when they asked if the stories were true, Marcus would smile and point to their mother, whose green eyes still held the same fire that had once defied the most powerful man in Rome. Every word, he would say. Every single word. But the most important truth he taught them was this, that freedom is not a destination you reach, but a choice you make every single day. And Marcus Brutus, former slave, former gladiator, and forever free man, had chosen well.